Hey, welcome to episode 6 of AMC Heroes, where we talk about everything involving the cinematic world of superheroes and supervillains. Joining me this week, as always, is John Campea. What's up, John?
Hey, guys. We're really excited about this. So much stuff came out this week. It's crazy.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to cover. And our special guest this week, a good pal of mine for many years, is Robert Meyer Burnett. He's the writer, editor, director of Free Enterprise, and he's worked on a ton of stuff. He's been the mastermind of most of the DVD special features that you've watched. Robert, what are you going to talk about? What are you working on right now?
Well, right now, I just started working on a feature film that I'm editing called Paradox, that's produced by the producer of Shoot 'Em Up, the executive producer of Shoot 'Em Up, directed by my good buddy Mike Hurst, and it stars Zoe Bell, that you might remember from Death Proof.
Awesome.
I love Zoe Bell.
And it's a really cool time travel thriller that takes place 1 hour in the future.
But bad things probably happen.
But bad things happen. Yeah. And it's really cool.
Can't wait. So that'll be coming at us in 2019 at AMC Theaters, because it takes a long time to make movies, guys. Let's move on. We're going to rock right into our very first story, which is James Wan, the director of The Conjuring, and also you might know him as the Furious 7 director. He's rumored to be doing the King of Atlantis himself, Waterman. You might know him as Aquaman. Jason Momoa just made Aquaman a much more bigger, badass guy. He's going to be in Justice League in some form or another. What do you guys think about James Wan directing Aquaman?
I think if they can make it work, I think it's going to be a really intriguing choice. I mean, we know that he has success with the horror genre. We've seen him move into Fast and the Furious world, and I really enjoyed Fast and the Furious 7. I didn't like it quite as much as 5 and 6. That's fine. So I don't know how much of the action style is his and how much of it is just the carryover from the other stuff. But so if he is announced as the guy, I think I feel comfortable with it. The big question mark that's hanging over this, of course, right now is the Fast and Furious franchise. He is under contract to do 8 and 9 if the studio asks him to do it. So they are talking to him, and if they ask him to come back for 8, which they probably will because Fast and Furious is making tons of money, then it might still work for Aquaman because they might be able to work around the scheduling. So let's just see how that plays out. But if it does work, it's a good name to me. I'm happy with it.
How about you, Robert?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, one of the things James Wan doesn't get enough credit for is he humanized the horror genre. If you look at Insidious and you look at Conjuring, those movies work so well not because he's the master of the jump scare, but you really like the people in those movies. And you really empathize with them. So when the stuff goes down, you're worried about them. And I think beyond all the great action and the visual effects, what makes a great superhero movie are the characters. And Jason Momoa as Aquaman looks great. We loved him as Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. But he's got to be a guy that you like and that you want to hang out with, the same way that, say, you like Steve Rogers or you like Tony Stark. And I think James Wan, I mean, he did Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, which was a very underrated action film. And I thought with Fast and Furious 7, he handled the action great, but he also knows how to do character. And that's what, let's face it, after Entourage and they made fun of Aquaman,
Right.
we need to see Aquaman it has to overcome the idea that you laugh.
Right.
And Jason Momoa's great casting because you're not going to laugh at that Aquaman.
No.
Oh, no, in that picture that came out, you're not laughing at that dude. In the street, you're not laughing at that
And I don't
dude.
think they're going to call it Waterman. I think they're going to call it King of Atlantis. That just has a nice, tasty ring to it.
Right.
No, that's not a good idea. That's a brilliant idea. King of Atlantis is a perfect title for that movie. I mean, you'd probably for branding, you probably got to call it Aquaman - King of Atlantis. You probably have to do that for the branding,
Right.
but I love that title you came up with.
I would hope that they lose Aquaman. I'm just sorry. It's just so Super Friends fun. No. You know, it's like it's attached to that, and also Aqua. You know,
I want to see him ride a giant seahorse.
See, that would kill it. Unless what if it was a seahorse?
Well, that's what
the Kraken seahorse.
Right, and if it looks like Momoa looks in that
Right.
picture, and if the seahorse looks like that.
Yeah, Momoa needs someone like James Wan because if he doesn't have that, you get Conan the Barbarian.
You
it's
need.
Yeah.
I mean, Wan grew up. He was a fan of giant monsters. He understands how to take something that could be inherently ridiculous and make it badass.
Yeah, I think he's a great choice. I hope he does it. Let's move on to our next topic. Number 2, we got the Civil War writers writing the Infinity War. They're going to bring both of the gauntlets to us in a couple of years. It's Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. They're going to return to map out the battle with Thanos over the big gauntlet. And I'm excited about that because, man, those guys killed it with The Winter Soldier. One of the most fun Marvel films to date to come out, and really a gripping story, a really fun ride. I'm all for them not only just continuing a civil war, but jumping into, basically the cosmic soup that is the Marvel Universe. Thanos, you got a dude named Infinity. I mean, who are they going to bring all these crazy characters? Like, how are they going to do it? But if anyone's going to do it, these guys can bring that story, which is the most important part. We were talking about that earlier, having a great antagonist and having the story really ground all this crazy cosmic stuff. That's the most important part. So what do you guys think? Let's start with you, Robert.
Well, I think, Kevin Feige said that Winter Soldier was going to delve into a different genre, which was the 70s conspiracy thriller. Yeah. And I thought that was a great choice because there was a seriousness and a gravitas that grounded all the superhero action. I mean, even bringing back Robert Redford, but it started with that script. That script was terrific. I mean, the fact that Nick Fury was attacked, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? It really worked well. And if they can bring that grounding and that real worldness to the cosmicness, and they were good at that. They worked on the first Narnia movie, and they really brought out, again, the characterizations. And I think that, look, if they can do what they did with Hydra, with Thanos, and bring that kind of, even though Thanos is a cosmic entity, a godlike creature that is in love with death, if they can humanize that and make it like the man down the street that's going to brawl with you, the leader of the neighborhood, which is what Thanos is on a galactic scale, I think it could be great. I mean, I can't wait.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I am more excited about this news than I am about the Russo brothers coming to direct it. And I'm very excited about the Russo brothers coming to direct those films. I really am. The thing about Captain America Winter Soldier is that it was not just a different kind of genre of film, it was a different depth of film. Like, The Avengers is still my all-time favorite comic book movie. It is. But the Russo brothers, with these writers, they brought a different level of adult depth to that thing. You talk about, it was very much like a political thriller, like all that kind of stuff that they were able to do. And, we cannot talk too much about it, but we are allowed to give reaction. I love the new Avengers movie. I love Avengers Age of Ultron.
So jealous.
I mean, I do, but, and I won't go into what they are because we can't talk about, but I will say the things that I didn't like about it, and there's something to not like about every movie, was because I just came out of Captain America Winter Soldier and I got spoiled with that extra layer of depth that movie gave us that isn't present in the Avengers, which is still spectacular and awesome. So that being said, the fact that they're going to move in, I'll be more excited or less excited depending on what we see with Civil War. Right. But as of right now, I think this is very exciting news. What do you think?
I agree completely with what you just said about the Avengers Age of Ultron. We can't talk about it yet, but that grounding is one of the things that I wanted a little bit more from Avengers Age of Ultron. And that's like saying, this delicious soup, if only it had one more sprinkling of pepper. It's just too delicious, but I'm going to complain slightly about this amazing, delicious Fulton the bouquet. But if pepper could be added. So, look,
you should do a cooking show. You should totally AMC cooking show.
Right, but with superheroes. So that's what this is. Wait a minute. So let's move on. I think, we're really happy with the writing decision. Those guys are great. So don't screw it up with Civil War. So, all right, we got the new Ant-Man trailer that just dropped today, and let's talk about how awesome that was. What do you think, John? Let's start with you.
I got to see it before anybody else. It was actually pretty awesome. Like, literally, I was at the Disney lot the other day, and we talked about this. I got to moderate the Avengers Age of Ultron press conference, which was great, hanging out with those people all day. And Kevin Feige comes out, and they tell me, like, just before we start the press conference, hey, literally 5 minutes ago, just gave my final stamp on the new Ant-Man thing. We're going to show it after the press conference to the audience this year. But don't tell them. Make sure they don't leave, but don't tell them. Like, holy crap, all right. Then they come out, they play it. Look, I'm still going to tell you right now, I do not love this trailer. I don't love it. But it's a very good trailer, and I thought a big improvement over the first one. And this one is really starting to give us an insight, because everything we hear coming from set, because we sent Christian Harloff to go cover the set visit, everything we've heard from the set is that this is going to be a really fun, a really entertaining, and most importantly, a really funny film. That's what all the reports are coming is that. And the first trailer didn't really give us much of that. This one, we get our first look at Yellow Jacket. I gotta tell you, design-wise, they nailed it. He looks terrific on screen. And the funny is there. We talked about AMC Movie Talk, but that toy train scene killed me.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I mean, I think, again, give it up for Kevin Feige, my hero. The guy can do no wrong. But the fact that Ant-Man, it seemed like it would get a little too serious. Like even the trailer was delving into, sort of devolving into this superhero action. And then the idea of doing a serial, a Republic serial train set sequence is genius. I don't know who came up with that idea. I don't know if it was in the original scripts, but then the way they shoot it, they make it look like it's a reel from like a 50s movie, you know, a Western or something, and then it pulls back that snap zoom or back to the train crashing on the little table. I mean, if the movie sustains that kind of humor, in addition to being badass, the action seems awesome. I'm like, that's the kind of movie. Again, it's a heist movie. It's a criminal. It's a thriller. It's going to be like maybe a Thomas Crown Affair type movie with superheroes. But that train scene at the end, if the whole movie's like that, I think it's going to be as successful as any other Marvel movie. You know, there were naysayers with Guardians of the Galaxy. They're like, this movie's never going to work. Now they're saying that with Ant-Man. Yeah. But you know what? Kevin Feige knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and this trailer, I loved it. And it made me, I mean, I've always been a big Ant-Man fan. Back in college, me and a pal of mine, we actually wrote an Ant-Man story and he illustrated it. I still
didn't
have
know
it.
that.
Yeah, I have an entire comic book. And what did we base it on? We were making it that the shrinking thing was militarized. And so now with this trailer, I was like, yay! Like I didn't have to make it. I get to watch a movie that's all about that. So it was like really fun for me to see that. And it also just adds this layer, like people laughing about stuff. What if you shrunk a tank and you had 1,000 tanks in your briefcase?
But they still had the firepower of a full-size tank.
Exactly. So that's kind of the whole idea, which is like, hey, look, they're saying they just gave this guy this incredible superpower, and you see him running along the side of a gun and just punching a dude out. You're like, wow, that's a pretty cool superpower. And he's hanging out with ants and like talking with them. And who wouldn't want to hang out with ants? I don't know about that, but anyway, it's like I think it seems really fun, and I think we mentioned this earlier. It's an entrance way into Civil War because they're like, look, you just gave a criminal superpowers. Like Scott Lang is, in all intents and purposes, getting out of prison, and now he's a superhero. So I don't know if that's going to work its way into the Civil War thing, or we'll see how it all works out.
But that's one of the key things here that I think this trailer reflects. And look, I'm no spoilers involved whatsoever here, okay? But a lot of us assumed, stupidly, I did, a lot of us assumed that the real lead into Civil War was going to be Avengers: Age of Ultron. It is not. Right. And it's Ant-Man is probably going to be that, and just made me even more excited for it.
Yeah, and actually, that's not a spoiler. Avengers: Age of Ultron has to do. They have to set up Infinity War. So let's move on and talk about. Speaking of Avengers, we had the Avengers: Age of Ultron premiere, and Joss Whedon says he's done. This is his last one. Now, obviously, we can't talk about it yet, but when the writer-director says it's a young man's game, the stakes are bigger every time, too big for him, he wants out. The big question, is Whedon done for good? I mean, we're talking about these other writers who are writing Civil War, who are jumping on to Infinity War. We've got the Russo brothers who are doing Civil War. They're jumping on to another double war, Infinity War 1 and 2. There's a lot of war going on. I haven't even seen Secret Wars yet. Maybe Whedon's returning for the Secret Wars. Is he done? He's going to go do Buffy in space. What's he going to do?
He's done.
Yeah,
I totally believe that he's done. I sat down and talked with him this weekend, and the impression you get, I remember the last Avengers film. I sat down and talked to him like literally about one day after he just put the final print on it, right? On the first Avengers. And that dude was wrecked. I mean, he was wrecked. He could barely talk louder than this. And he's still trying really hard to be charming and fun because he's hilarious. Yeah. Talking to him in person, even when his energy is like this, he's super hilarious. But I remember being surprised that he was even coming back to do 2. I wasn't surprised that they asked him to do it, but I was surprised. And then talking to him again this weekend, I sat down with him and it's like, you could see it in his eyes. He's done. And here's the good thing for him. And I think it's the right move for him to be done because this guy is a creative genius. He doesn't want to be doing other people's movies. You know, he loves these comic books. He loves these stories. So he wanted to do them, but he doesn't want to make his career telling other people's stories. He wants to tell his stories. And now that he's going to have Avengers under his belt, and now that he's going to have another $2 billion movie under his belt, the doors are going to be thrown open for this guy to do pretty much whatever he wants for the rest of his career. And I think that's what you're going to see him pursue. So is it impossible that he comes back? No. Always a possibility he could when you back up enough dump trucks of money to his lawn. Give him 3 flops in a row. Not that he has movies that are going to flop, but if he has like 3 flops in a row, Marvel comes knocking on his door and say, yo, it's time for us to do a Bishop standalone movie. We got the rights back from Fox. Want you to do it. And here's a drop. Maybe then, but honestly, I really do think he's done.
What do you think, Robert?
A Bishop standalone movie? That's a great idea. Look, is there any mic dropping franchise movies? I mean, once you've done Avengers 1 and 2, that you drop the mic, you leave the room.
Yeah.
You've already done the biggest franchise movies arguably ever. I mean, the only other movie bigger than the Avengers is what? Avatar?
Avatar and Titanic?
And Titanic, but I think, then that was James Cameron, and those were not franchise pictures, and there's nowhere for him to go. Yes, Infinity Gauntlet, I mean, the Infinity War is going to be a huge movie, but it is just more of the same. Let Joss Whedon, I want to see a new Buffy. I want to see a new, even if he does a Shakespeare adaptation at his house again, I'd rather see him do that than do yet another Avengers movie.
I want to see season 2 of Firefly.
Or another movie.
Yeah. Or
Serenity 2.
I would prefer, I would like him to do, let's see season 2 of Firefly, then another movie, then season 3 of Firefly. Let's talk about that. I agree with you, though. I got to go to the set visit last year in London. These guys flew me out, and I watched a broken man directing the Avengers Age of Ultron. And literally, he had a limp because he had hurt his leg or something, and he was limping around while they were shooting some action scenes, even some stuff that we saw filmed that ended up we reworked it, and the thing that you saw, it's not even in the movie. That movie is so dense. You're watching a 2-hour and 25-minute film, and they had to shave out 45 minutes. So there's whatever the director's cut is going to be insane.
Maybe they'll put it back. I hope they put it back on Blu-ray.
So yeah, I mean, Joss Whedon has covered everything that he's probably wanted to cover in Avengers and then some. And it'll shatter you. That kind of workload, I can't even fathom it. So let that guy sleep for a year.
I remember I sent you to London to go cover it, and then you came back, and I remember one of our first conversations is I think I asked you, did he do it? Did Whedon do it again? I think you said something along the lines of, yeah, it's too bad he's never going to see it because this dude's going to die.
Because it was halfway through the shoot, and he was already super broken down and sweating, like me right now, sweating, but I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. But he was actually doing stuff, directing Thor, fighting, and all this crazy mad stuff. And the schedule they had was insane. It was literally, they were going from one set to another that was already pre-lit and ready to go, then to the Quinjet, then back to the Stark, to Avengers Mansion, then back to this other set. It was bam, bam, bam. They had it, and they were doing it. And they were just he would do, I remember he did a couple of shots with Downey Jr. They did 7 takes, and they were we got it. Because he saw the shots in the monitor. They're we're done, wrapped. This entire giant set, you're wow, that's kind of fast. I guess no, but they're working at that breakneck speed. We don't have time to be messing around. We're moving on. So
you just described my love life.
Hey, let's move on to a thing that I like to call minor mutations. This is where we just talk about a lot of quick things, and I'm just going to run them off, and then we're going to pick which ones we want to talk about. Fantastic Four dropped pics of the Thing doing his clobbering time pose. Love that pose. Love the film. The way it's looking right now, it looks like a cool sci-fi horror superhero film. Who doesn't want to see it now? We had a lot of issues about the Fantastic Four with the young cast, and we didn't know what was going on. Originally, I heard a lot of different rumors. Now I'm more than sold after hearing about Trank talking about doing a Cronenberg. So I can't wait, and hearing about Kinberg, how he's writing it, and his love for the Fantastic Four and the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, a special, cosmic sci-fi horror. That's what Fantastic Four is. So let's move on. Wonder Woman. She's getting 6 different costumes for her own movie. I heard she's gonna have some kind of scuba diving outfit. She's gonna maybe be in space. What's going on with Wonder Woman? Maybe it's gonna be set in World War II. It's gonna be pretty cool. So those people who want to see Wonder Woman in more than one skimpy outfit or just a bunch of different outfits, you're gonna get your flavor with that. We've got more Archangel artwork revealed by Bryan Singer for his new Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, and the artwork that he's dropping online looks fantastic. It looks great, and I love these designs that we're getting an advanced look at seeing Angel done right. I mean, we saw The Last Stand, but let's just forget about that. Now we actually get to see Angel. We're gonna, I think, hopefully get to see all the original X-Men in this film, albeit they're gonna get transformed by Apocalypse. Let's move on. Ruffalo wants a Hulk. So we hear Ruffalo talking about how much he wants to do a Hulk movie, how he'd love to do a Planet Hulk. Not saying whether or not Avengers Age of Ultron sets that up to be happening or not, but we definitely could possibly see a standalone Hulk film in the future. We don't know for sure if that's ever going to happen. Rights issues, a lot of the Marvel guys have said that Hulk works best when he's with a group of people, but we can't. Why not have Planet Hulk and then have him with a group of people? So something like that. Let's move on. Suicide Squad dropped a full cast table read picked, plus a green-haired Leto as the Joker camera picked, like a little ode to the Killing Joke. So I mean, that was great to see that, and it's fun to see that they're moving forward with Suicide Squad and everybody's moving forward. We got Doctor Strange. Is he going to be British? Maybe, says Kevin Feige at the Avengers press junket. They haven't decided yet. Also, Spider-Man's in high school, and he's going to be running around in a little, handmade costume. It's already designed. Also, Feige once again. And Feige can't stop with the spoilers. He dropped Captain Marvel was almost in the Avengers, but they cut her out because it was already chock full of like a million people in the Avengers. So they were like, let's just introduce her later in her own film, or maybe in Civil War, however they're going to introduce her. It's not going to be in Avengers Age of Ultron. Guys, let's talk about these mutations. What sticks out to you?
Well, I think it's great that Spider-Man is going to go back to where he should be. He should have always been in high school. I thought after Tobey Maguire, they were going to put him back in high school, and then they cast an actor in his late 20s to play Spider-Man again. I mean, Spider-Man is goofy. He's new at this. He's not a seasoned veteran. He doesn't come from Asgard. He's a nebbishy science student who created his web slingers, and he created his web slingers. They were not natural. And I think that that's where it should be. The wisecracking Spider-Man from my youth. I want to see him on screen.
A few things stand out to me. We say it every single week, Schnepp. We're getting more and more bought into this Fantastic Four thing.
Yeah.
That thing design, and look, I had no problems with the Michael Chiklis thing. I have a lot of problems with the first two Fantastic Four films. But honestly, actually, one of those problems, my big complaints was not Michael Chiklis' thing, nor the designer thing. I thought, hey, that's fine. This looks awesome. It looks incredible. Just because the picture great doesn't mean the movie's going to be great. Completely agree about the Spider-Man stuff. It's great to have him a teenager. The nice thing about that is you get a younger actor in there, hopefully no older than like 22 or 23 and play him 17 or whatever. But that means you can ride this guy for like 10 years.
Yeah.
10, 15 years in 20 different films, and you're good. You never have to change. Then the audience can grow up with Peter Parker. Peter Parker can later graduate high school, graduate college later, working now at the Bugle full time, blah, blah. We can grow with him. I think that's incredible. The Captain Marvel stuff is really interesting. Sounds a lot like The Wasp. Remember, Joss Whedon originally wrote The Wasp into the first Avengers, had no Black Widow, and Kevin Feige made him kick Wasp out and put the other. And the last thing that really stood out to me is that Killing Joke pick was great. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Leto had like green hair, but there's nothing Jokerish about him. But just the fact that they're tuned in enough to understand that a picture like that, mimicking that shot, was a very smart move. It gives me a lot of faith in them.
And back to Bryan Singer, I've known Bryan for years, and I did DVD special editions for X-Men and X-Men 2, and I really thought that Days of Future Past was kind of Bryan's toy box was kind of messed up. Right. So Bryan got to go back to his X-Men toy box and put it back the way he wanted. And I think he actually showed me what Apocalypse is going to look like. He showed me awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
see, now I'm the one who's jealous. You're jealous
awesome
of us when we saw Avengers.
It was awesome, but seeing that Archangel picture, I mean, it's right out of the comics, but even cooler.
Yeah.
And I think that I have no idea what it's about, but the character of Nsaba Noor is such a great character. I mean, the ultimate mutant. He's thousands of years old. He's bent on. He wants to breed in circuses and make people fight. And only the strong will survive. Yeah. I like that idea. I think it's tremendous, and I think it's going to kick ass if it's anything like Days of Future Past, which I loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Days of Future Past was so fantastic. So it was really fun to have Bryan return to this franchise that he invigorated cinematically and make it great again. So I can't wait for Apocalypse. Let's move on to a thing I call superhero flashback. We're going to talk about a movie that happened maybe 3 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. This time we're talking about Darkman. Sam Raimi's Darkman. This is a movie that came out in 1990, and it starred a little-known actor named Liam Neeson. And he played...
Who?
I know, right?
So, you're going to get a special call from me, and I've got a particular set of skills, but my face has been exploded.
By the way, that is the best Liam Neeson impersonation I've ever heard.
That,
you nailed it. I thought he was sitting beside
totally
me.
nailed it. Did sound like him, didn't it, guys? Like, listen to it again.
Hey, my name is Neil Leeson, and I'm Darkman. Give me back the bunny.
So...
Give me back the bunny.
Darkman is an incredible, strange, weird hybrid of both horror, Phantom of the Opera meets The Shadow. It's a freaky, crazy film that only a mutant like Sam Raimi could come up with and make it amazingly fun to watch, and has to me, one of my favorite scenes cinematically in almost any film ever is when they're playing, like you throw the ball and then he's like, give me back there. You go through the eye and explosions and he breaks the dude's finger. It's so freaky. It's like a freaky, that's Sam Raimi at his purest. What do you guys think of Darkman?
Well, it's like he was making Evil Dead, but and he took, it was, the comic book movies today are so far the other direction from what Darkman is. I mean, Darkman is a truly crazy, weird, almost an EC comic book. And the design is nutty, and it's almost got comic book panels in the frame.
Yeah,
and it's for a particular taste, I think.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, especially now, you go back and it looks like it came from hundreds of years ago compared to what we get now with our comic book movies. So I highly recommend it.
No, I flat out loved this movie when I first saw it. The concept of the dude. I remember the first time I was watching with my buddies, and they're like, wait a minute, they burned away his pain receptors? That's kind of awesome. He can feel no pain and all this kind of stuff. And Neeson was great. Now, then they went on and did Darkman 2.
I know. And 3.
And 3. And, whatever. Sure, why not? Whatever. I would love to see a Darkman remake, to be honest with you. I think that character is so interesting. You get Liam Neeson back to do it again. I don't care. But yeah, I remember it, and it stuck with me. Like, it stuck with me. Like, I saw it when I was young. But, man, it just stuck with me this whole time, to the fact that we can still sit here and quote it and talk about it.
Well, it's Universal. It might show up in one of the next Fast and Furious movies.
Well, it had all these
Darkman.
It had these weird elements.
Furious 8.
Where it's sort of like, it was like Mission Impossible. Remember, he put weird rubber faces on, and he would go in and do stuff, and then it was kind of had this really big horror element to it. I mean, mainly because, it's guy's messed up mentally too, because he's trying to hide in the shadows, but he's got basically what Kick-Ass, he has no pain receptors. So Kick-Ass Mark Millar was like, Darkman, take a little, not that. So if you haven't seen Darkman, do yourself a favor. It's one of Sam Raimi's earlier films before he went on to do Spider-Man, the amazing trilogy with Tobey Maguire. Check it out. So now we're going to move on to a thing called Spotlight, which is where I'll pick out a couple of comic book characters who have not gotten their cinematic play yet. So starting out this week, we've got 100 Bullets. It's Azzarello and Risso's violent, sexy crime comic, and I think this would make a great film series. It's like a neo-noir. It has all the right ingredients to get to the big screen. Just pump it up with a giant all-star cast. I say think Traffic, but even grimier. So that's my first one. What do you guys think about 100 Bullets? It's a 100 comic issues, and then it ends perfectly. So.
I think that's a great idea. Like you said, do it as Traffic. That never occurred to me. That's a great way to do that comic, especially if you took the 100 issues as one long story, which it really is,
totally.
And has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yep.
To plan it as a film series, that's really audacious. I mean, it's a DC universe. Well, it could be in the DC universe or not. It could be a standalone film. I think that's a great idea. I'd love to see that happen.
One of the reasons I love this segment is because you bring up stuff that I am unfamiliar with. Because, growing up, I've been reading comics and everything since I was a kid, but you forget when you read all the mainstream comics, and that's the thing. I'm like a lot of people. I read all the mainstream stuff, right? You forget that there is this huge other rich world, which is why I love this show, because not only you bring up these types of stories like Nemesis, right? And remember, the response that we got from you guys over Nemesis was great. The guests you bring in are plugged into all this kind of stuff. I love it. So I did some preliminary reading on this thing after you introduced me to it. I'm like, the way you just described it is exactly what I had pictured in my head as I was reading about it. It's like, and I actually am reading, it's like, this is like Traffic. And then, the way you described it is perfect. So yeah, I'd be all for that.
Right on. Yeah, do yourself a favor. Just buy the first trade paperback, check it out, and then you will be hooked, because it's got a great storyline. I don't even want to do any spoilers, but the main Agent Graves, he's got a briefcase with 100 bullets, which are untraceable. So let's just leave it at that. Let's move on to our next guy. I say Kamandi, you say Kamandi.
Kamandi.
But we're going to be talking about Jack Kirby's creation. He was plugged into the 70s. He was making a lot of stuff. He jumped from Marvel, went back to DC, back to Marvel. This is when he was over at DC in the 70s. He created this this thing using Planet of the Apes as like a kind of a jumping off point. We got this young adult mixed in with like cat men, lizard men, metal men, all types of weirdos. It's all focused on the last boy on Earth just trying to survive. And, you know, in Jack Kirby's hands, we got some really, truly cool, freaky, strange issues. And I think it went about 38 issues. Then it got canceled. And then they've been rebooting Kamandi for years. He's ripe to be done as a movie. What do you think?
I've always loved Kamandi. I mean, or Kamandi. I mean, the thing is, he's a kid. He's the ultimate child fantasy. Like when you watch Planet of the Apes, you think to yourself, I wonder what it would be like if I lived there. You know, and that's the ultimate. You're surrounded by every single monster or creature that you want, and you're a kid, but basically you're the coolest kid on the planet, the only kid on the planet left, but you're surrounded by everything you dream about anyway. So why not see that? It could be a series of films, and you could even have a kid start like Harry Potter, a kid who's like 10. And then there's a series of Kamandi movies, and the kid grows up and you watch him grow into a man.
That's a fantastic idea.
You know, and unify the planet at the end where, you know, do what John Carter could have been, but isn't.
I know, right?
You know, I've always said it Kamandi. But I've never heard, you know, it's one of those things words where it's like you always said it a certain way, and then you realize I've always read this, but I've never heard anybody say it.
Yeah.
So anyway, Kamandi, there's the way I always said it. It was one of those books that my buddy had always in one of his big boxes of comics, and I would read through them and stuff like that. And I remember reading it and thinking, wow, this one's a waste of time. I mean, Kamandi is clearly a byproduct of the era in which it was created and all that kind of stuff. You can see all the cultural influences in there, which were really creative, which is a Kirby mainstay, right? You see that a lot in Kirby's work, which is usually lends itself to some really great results. But I remember I just thought it was, hey, silly is great if it's good silly. I just found it to be kind of poor silly and boring, and it was a comic book that I was never into. I can't I'll be the odd one out. I can't see this one cinematically.
You got to revisit it though. I mean,
maybe
you're reading it like, because what happens in comic book world when you're reading stuff, like I remember I hated when I was a little kid, I didn't like Gene Colan or Gil Kane because I only liked Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. And then years later, I started to develop an appreciation for Gene Colan and Gil Kane because of their very specific style. And then you realize, oh my God, like I see the influence from Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz and all these other incredible artists that were appreciative of Gil Kane and Gene Colan and all. I mean, so it's like, and I've one of my best friends had the exact opposite. He loved Gene Colan but hated Jack Kirby because of the way Kirby, everything didn't look realistic. So then after a while, then you realize, oh, it's all about the composition and the ability to portray action and to portray this kind of like living visual force. That's what Kirby became what he was all about later in his life, was just being able to grab this kind of like amazing compositional skill that no one else ever had or ever will have. I think, you know, you have these one in a lifetime kind of guys. I think Kamandi is definitely worth checking it out and revisiting it, because it is like how you described it.
I will do that.
It is a fun, weird kind of off the cuff thing, and it is definitely just influenced by, oh, there's Planet of the Apes. What about cat people? What if it was a dude who was his friend who was made of metal? You know, so all these like really weird things. And it's like the good thing about a Jack Kirby written comic is it doesn't stay too. It's like he was like the first ADD guy of comic book land. He would like have a million different ideas and he would chuck them all into one comic and not even care because I got a million more. Like he'd just be like, I got 5 more coming at you, son. Be ready. So it was kind of a fun way to experience comics through his eyes, you know? There's just millions of different ideas getting thrown at you. And you guys have been throwing millions of questions over here. So let's start into our Twitter questions. We got question number 1. It's from King of the Big Kids. With Spider-Man coming to the MCU, do you think we'll see Tony create the Iron Spider suit for him, a la Civil War? What do you guys think?
Well, I hope so. One of the great things about Civil War was that Iron Spider suit. When that 8-inch Iron Spider figure came out, I couldn't go to Toys R Us fast enough and get it. I love the Iron Spider. And then he also revealed his secret identity to the world. I don't know if they'll do that. They might, because part of the pivotal nature of Civil War was that Spider-Man was on one side and then he sort of changed sides halfway through, which was awesome. But I would love to see Iron Spider. I certainly hope so. How badass would that be? I want a Hot Toys figure of Iron Spider.
Might I mention that Robert Meyer Burnett is one of the best collectors I've ever known. He's got a pristine collection of Hot Toys, all the different Starship Enterprises, like just set up in the like glass cases, and it's pretty impressive. It's insane, actually. It's like I'm quite jealous of this guy's insane toy collection. It's like it's quite spectacular. When he talks about Hot Toys, I can verify that this man probably has all of them.
Well, Hot Toys are kind of like the Ferrari or the Lamborghini of action figures. I've been buying action figures my whole life, and now I figured, I'm too old to buy them. But then Hot Toys puts out another like die-cast Iron Man figure, and I'm like, I have to have that. Yep. Like, it's a compulsion.
What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think they will. I think people are rushing to too much of a conclusion and thinking that, now that Spider-Man is kind of in a way in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that means the Civil War movie will be just like the comics and they're going to make it revolve around Spider-Man. No, they're not. I really don't think. I think they had their plans for Civil War already in place, and I think they think their plans are pretty damn good before everything about Spider-Man was finalized. I do think that Spider-Man will appear in Civil War. I do think we're going to see him there, but I do not think that Civil War is going to be a Spider-Man-centric movie. And I don't think you're going to see him now hooking up with Tony and getting the Iron Spider suit. And we were talking about on Heroes before that what I don't think they're making a part of this movie is the secret identity thing. Like in the comic series, the secret identity thing is a key central element to what's going on in these things. But since most of the heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now don't have secret identities anyway, I don't think we're going to get that one iconic standing at the podium, I'm Peter Parker kind of thing, right? And then see J. Jonah Jameson going, what? That's not going to happen. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see the Iron Spider
unless
suit.
It's Hawkeye pulling his fake mask off and he's Spider-Man.
And he's actually Loki.
What? Yeah, he's a zombie again. I don't think because everyone knows who Tony Stark is and knows who Steve Rogers is in the cinematic world, the secret identity part is less important, and what is more important is do we have some control over these weird dudes with superpowers? There's a god flying around with a giant hammer from another universe. Who's in control of this dude? So I think those are the questions that Civil War will be addressing.
It'd be cool if we see Iron Spider, though.
It would be cool.
I'm not
There's
arguing.
no denying that would be damn cool. It's really damn cool.
I just want to see a good Spider-Man first before we see an Iron
Spider.
Spider.
Let's get into Spider-Man. Let's let them develop Spider-Man, give him a few stories and a few movie arcs, and then maybe once everybody's really familiar with him, then maybe try throwing a curveball at the audience with something like the Iron Spider and all that kind of stuff. Till then, let's let him breathe.
Plus,
a little.
I think the guys who wrote Civil War, who are doing Infinity Gauntlet, had already written Civil War, and we already know Black Panther is going to be the central focus of that. I think they already did that announcement where they had, you have Captain America, you have Iron Man, then you had Black Panther, and he's going to be part of that. So I don't know how they're going to weave it together, but I'm looking forward to it. We got question number 2. Mike N writes, when people talk about Marvel villains in movies, why do people forget the villain from Blade 2? He was insane. Loved him. All right, the villain from Blade 2.
Well, there were a couple of villains in Blade 2. First of all, you had the big bad guy. Then you had his son, who was the first of the hybrid guys who really wants to kill his father.
Right.
He's the vampire who eats other vampires.
Opening weird mouth.
Nomak.
Nomak, that's exactly his name. Bravo. Good memory. And he was a great villain, but here's the thing. I'm going to pull out a TV reference here for comparison's sake. Mm-hmm. You watch Daredevil.
Right.
And I think that the best thing about the Daredevil thing might be my favorite television villain in years is Wilson Fisk.
Oh yeah.
The way he is portrayed in that show, intelligent, multiple layers to this guy. He has insecurities and fears, and he has multiple levels of motivation, things that drive him, the things that make him scary. He's such a well-rounded character first, and then let's make him a villain. The problem with MODOK is that he's a scary badass, but just as a character, I love Blade 2, but that wasn't one of its big strengths. We had a really scary monster, not so much of a villain character per se. And do you see what I'm saying? Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, you bring up Daredevil. It's like everyone's been writing. Sorry, we're not covering Daredevil, but that's a TV show, and this is a movie-centric show. You can email us and we'll talk to you on Twitter, for many paragraphs, or maybe just I'll favorite you. But, love Daredevil, the series. I haven't had time yet to even get through the entire series, but it's fantastic. And it's like, if you love the comic book series, a lot of people love the Bendis, a lot of people love the Miller. this has that flavor of all of them and something new and more. It's like it's Marvel really stepping up to the gritty, violent world that is Hell's Kitchen. And that is the satisfying thing to me as a fan of those Daredevil stories, was like, well, I don't know if they could do it right. And man, did they just do it right. They just got it. So like I got the chills watching that show, and I was like, I got to finish watching it. I don't have time. So I'm going to, slowly ebb it out, but I cannot wait to see it. And you saw all of them.
2 days. I watched the whole series in 2 days.
I can't agree with you more. Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio just nails that role.
Crushed
my
it.
God. Look, he adds layers. Like a lot of people, I've read some complaints about like people saying, he's not like.
We're talking a lot about Daredevil, considering we just said we weren't going to talk about Daredevil.
We're gonna talk about Daredevil for 2 more minutes, guys. Come on. Anyway, if you haven't seen Daredevil, you know where it's at. It's at Netflix. Check it out. And it is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so it's woven in there in a subtle, strange Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s way, but in a much cooler way. You see a bunch of stuff. But Blade 2, what did you say his name was? Nomak?
Nomak.
But he's
Cool
not
name.
really a part of the
Modak.
official cinematic universe, though.
What, Blade 2?
Blade isn't.
Blade 2, yeah.
Right.
Modak's a different character.
Right.
Yeah, Modak's totally different.
You're talking about Modok.
But he might
Totally
show
different. That's a
Modok. Yeah,
different
he's
Guys,
Modok.
I think Modok should have his own movie.
Along with Sugarman.
Oh, that would be
Modok
a
and
weird-
Sugarman team up.
Sugarman is creepy and weird. Modok is awesome. I want them to fight. All right, let's move on. Question number 3. What can Justice League do to separate itself from the Avengers? It's a good question, and it's from Tahari. So what do you guys think?
I honestly think that's a question that's been around a lot and is getting far more attention than it should. Look, it's like saying, how can Batman separate itself from Wolverine? Or how, because they're both superhero movies. These are both going to be movies about groups of superheroes, but these are all very distinct and unique characters. You have lots of different cop movies, but they're different cops. So they tell different stories. And the way DC is approaching their cinematic universe is functionally the opposite way that Marvel does. Marvel, single setup, group film, bang. DC's going the different route, which I think was a smart move for them. They had Man of Steel, yes, but they're going to introduce a lot of their characters to us with the big movie and then have them go out and do their singular movies. And I think that is the right way for them to do it. As far as how do they make it stand out from Avengers, you don't even think about it. Don't even give it a second thought. Just make your movie. Make the best movie you can. And your characters are so different from the other guys' characters. Your flavor is so different from the other guys' flavor that I don't really think it needs to be something that they even have to give 2 seconds thinking about. So I honestly think we're going to be okay as far as that goes.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I just don't think that there's a competition at all is sort of a silly thing. Look, Marvel has done an amazing job with their cinematic universe, but so's DC. Did everyone forget the Christopher Nolan Batman movies? All 3 of them were incredibly successful. Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises each made over $1 billion. It's not like, and Man of Steel made $650 million. These are not slouches after all. These are very successful movies. And I think when you put these characters together, they are different flavors. They are the Avengers is bright, whereas the DC universe kind of takes place more in shadow. The way they've gone, it's sort of it'll be interesting to see if they keep, everything is sort of sinister, and even Wonder Woman isn't bright, it doesn't seem. Like Gal Gadot's first costume that we've seen is more of a burnished, sort of a coppery, metallic Roman armor to it. It isn't red, white, and blue, star-spangled. She doesn't have the pants with the stars on it. So I think we're going to get just a different feel. And it is going to be different flavors, like chocolate, vanilla, strawberry.
Well, I think a big indicator for how it's going to be different is just from where they were born. Like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they're all from an earlier generation of superheroes and come more from this original core idea. Like they're all stem from these original core ideas of superheroes and where that came from. Whereas in Marvel came from, let's take the world of the fantastic, the world of the monsters, the world of Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like that was Hulk. They took the Fantastic Four, which was basically challengers of the unknown with a bunch of amazing fantasy monsters chucked in. You had Spider-Man. He's a mutant. He got bit by a spider. It's all monsters and this transformation. Obviously, mutants came with X-Men. So that's the big core difference for me. Everything that stems from Marvel is a mutation. And people dealing with, hey, we have real story issues. We live in Manhattan. We don't live in Metropolis. DC universe has this more of a we live amongst gods and we live amongst archetypes. So it's a very different, and how do those archetypes interact with us, and do those archetypes, like Batman, that's what Nolan was so good at. He took that archetype and was like, he made him what Miller did, was made him a vigilante and made him have to fight against the cops. It's not just like, hey, we're with Batman, this weird dude who dresses up like a bat. The cool thing about Batman is always the thing that everyone loves about him and Iron Man. They're both human. Like Iron Man has to wear armor and deal with technology. Batman has to be like a detective and figure out who's doing these crazy crimes and murders, and also has to freak people out. That's why he dresses like a bat. I think it still works. You know what I mean? If you were like walking around a corner and you were in an alley, and you saw a dude like, hey man, what's up? And you'd be like, hey, what's up? If you walked around a corner and you saw a Batman, he's like, hey man, what's up? You'd run screaming. Well, like, what is going on? You know?
Well, you know, the Avengers, other than Thor, they're all human beings that basically are doing jobs. Hawkeye and Black Widow are agents.
Yeah.
You know, Tony Stark is an industrialist weapons designer, whereas Aquaman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are all essentially godlike characters, and the only human being is Batman. So it's almost the exact reverse of what you've got with the Avengers characters.
Totally.
And I think that makes it different. Like, what do you do when you get a team full of gods? Whereas the Avengers can have bickering people, and Thor shows up and he's like, I have no time for you. And he can go back to Asgard. You know, I mean,
he's like, thank God I get to go back to Asgard.
I mean,
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So
all right, let's move on to question 5. If you could cast any actor or actress from any era to play any comic book character, who would it be?
I hate these questions.
I know, right?
I really do. I hate these questions so much.
I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of people to talk about.
Just
you know what? Although I'll tell you, I would cast Clint Eastwood, a young Clint Eastwood, as Bruce Wayne.
Nice.
I would have cast the man with no name, Clint Eastwood, as Bruce Wayne and Batman, circa 1967.
I'll follow your lead. I'll go a young Paul Newman as Tony Stark.
I love that.
That would be great too.
Stark.
I'm going to go super weird. A Fred McMurray from Double Indemnity time from the 40s as Green Lantern.
Oh,
but the old school Green Lantern with the weird orange cape.
What
Alan
was his
Scott?
name? Yeah, that's it.
Alan Scott,
Totally.
Green Lantern. Wow. Okay.
Nailed it. All right.
Now, what about a female? What about
Let's
a
rock
female character?
Okay. I would go with, give me a second.
How about Veronica Lake as Captain Marvel?
Ooh, I like that. I would go with Lauren Bacall as Spider-Woman.
I was going to say the other Hepburn.
Catherine.
The other Hepburn.
Audrey.
Audrey Hepburn is Catwoman.
Ooh, that's great.
Grace Kelly, Wonder Woman.
Oh,
Nice.
Grace Kelly is Wonder Woman? That's an interesting one.
All right, we can go on quite a long time, but if we give us 25 minutes because we got to think about this. But let's move on. We got question 6 from Parvez for Real. It's a good name. El Nonia asked question 5, but Parvez for Real says, would Martian Manhunter be involved in Justice League by any chance? Because he has an iconic role in the group, in the comics is what this guy's talking about. What do you think? Is he going to be in the movie?
I think he no.
Go ahead.
Well, I think he should be. I mean, if they can pull off, if Marvel can pull off the Hulk and make the Hulk a beloved character now, and the Hulk is lovable.
Yeah.
You know, even though we saw that clip of Hulkbuster beating up on Hulk, you still love the Hulk in the Avengers movies. And I think that Martian Manhunter, with his Oreo obsession, I mean, he's the soul of the Justice League. He became the soul of the Justice League. It's just then you have to introduce. I mean, if they're introducing Aquaman, they can introduce the last Martian left. Yeah. I mean, they can do that. Although it's going to be tough. Who do you get to play? Martian John Jones. Who do you get to play him?
You could get anybody because he's a shapeshifter.
There you go.
That's true.
What do you think, John?
This is one of those trap questions where, you know, in the infinite thing of comic books and the animated stuff and all that kind of stuff, you're going to love some characters and some things, and you're not going to love others. And if you ever say there's something you don't love, there's going to be a gaggle of there's going to be a segment of the fans out there who now are going to hate you forever and want your families to die in the burning fires of Rome.
So now that you've been trapped by this question,
but I'm still going to call it like I see it. I do not like Martian Manhunter. Never have. Even in Injustice: Gods Among Us, the role they had him playing that, I thought that was kind of a waste. And all the cartoon stuff, never found him interesting. The cartoon stuff, I don't think he translates cinematically. I don't think he would work. You would have to find a way to make him work. If you got to make something work, then do something else instead that more naturally works. So that's just my opinion. Then again, I'm sure there's people out there who didn't like Iron Man, and it worked, and whatever, and that's cool. But just my thoughts. He's one of the comic book characters I just don't care about.
I think he worked great in Darwin Cook's comic book called Frontiers, and the way
Frontier,
and the New Frontiers, it was kind of an origin story for the Justice League, but done in this loving way of like taking the 40s and 50s and 60s and that kind of art style that Darwin Cook, if you're not familiar with him, he's an incredible artist. Has kind of a Bruce Timm animated style to the way he draws everything.
There's an absolute version of that too, so you can get the oversized.
I have that.
Absolute
I have
New
the
Frontier.
Absolute New Frontier, and it's fantastic. And if you haven't heard of this
fantastic.
comic, check it out. And the way they take the Martian Manhunter is he's basically the glue, and he brought the whole Justice League together, but they do it in such a great way. It's like he is just like Superman, an alien from another planet. So we've already introduced the idea of, hey, who's that weird dude floating around? Oh, it's Superman. So the idea of another creature from another planet isn't out of the realm of DC. They've already done it. They're obviously going to be bringing in like people from hidden worlds, both Atlantis and, Wonder Woman, her island. So they're going to have all these different characters, basically these gods. And now we're going to probably get glued together, brought together by another alien saying, hey, we've got another alien threat and he's coming for Earth.
But I think you just kind of I think the point you raised kind of goes to what I was saying. Like, the DC Cinematic Universe has already done the super-powered alien from another world who has now come to Earth and calls Earth home. We got him. He's Superman. Right. We don't need to do it again. It's already done. Let's get other types of characters.
But he's different. He's a different kind of character.
He's the same, but he's different, sure. But the principle.
Plus, the White Martians are great antagonists. When they came back in the Justice League comics, they posed quite a significant problem for the
That's
Justice
a very
League.
extra sweaty little anecdote there. Speaking of sweat, let's get into the bonus extra sweaty question of the week. This is our last question. It comes from Brad Demeter, and he's a yo, Schnepp, I refuse to use the Twitter or Instagram. Yeah, I don't know why. So I'm going to ask you, to ask my question here and dream to someday have an extra sweaty bonus question of the day. Well, sweats, you got it, Brad. Here it is. Do you think we'll ever see any on-screen exploration into the relationship between the Vision and Scarlet Witch from the comics? It's the obvious story arc to follow, further explore Vision's humanity, but it remains to be seen how or even if the movies will get into that. Sweat or die.
We have a problem in that Schnepp and I know some things that we can't even allude to.
We can't even allude to them.
We can't even allude to them. So what do you think?
I can postulate. Well,
Postulate,
first of all,
please.
Look, I think the relationship Vision will have with Scarlet Witch is problematic for a company that prides itself on family entertainment. I think how do you try and convince, or how do you explain to the children who love the Avengers that the Vision, who is an artificial life form, who is not real, has a romantic relationship with the Scarlet Witch? I mean, that's a little progressive even for this day and age. I mean, maybe not as we move forward, because that's a great allegorical way of dealing with, say, LGBT issues or any kind of interesting non-traditional couplings. But I don't know if they can do that in a movie, especially if they want to procreate.
Right.
But I haven't seen Age of Ultron, but I can't wait to see the Vision. But maybe they'll have the same kind of relationship that Hawkeye has with Black Widow. I could see something like that. Or maybe they'll take it further.
Yep, and we can't say anything about it, but say, hey, man, you know what? The Vision's in that movie. Totally saw the Vision.
Sure is. He
Certainly
sure is there.
And he looks great.
He looks really good. Paul Bettany, fantastic job as a Vision. Looks like robot Shakespeare right there.
Can't wait for that Hot Toys figure, and they're making one already.
Yeah, he's already pre-ordered I've got both different versions of him in the liquid bath and in the costume, and also the additional weird costumes. So speaking of sweaty nerds, let's say thank you to Robert Meyer Burnett. What are you up to, and where can people find you, Robert?
Well, thank you for having me. I can be found on Twitter at BurnettRM or on Facebook at Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm also working on the Axanar Project. It's an independent Star Trek project. You can see Prelude to Axanar on YouTube right now. It's a 21-minute documentary from the future that was sort of our proof of concept. And we are going to launch a Kickstarter for the feature film soon.
Awesome. John, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Facebook and on Twitter. Just follow me at John Campea.
And he still can't talk about Avengers.
And I still can't say anything.
When can we actually talk about
We
this?
can talk about the Avengers next week.
Next week. So
next
one
week
more
we can
week
talk
of
about
silence.
It,
Well, you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, just at Jon Schnepp and at TDOSLWH. You could get your tickets to my documentary premiere April 30th, May 1st, and 2nd at the Egyptian Theater. Go to fandango.com, order those, hang out with all of us. John Campea will be there, red carpet. Robert will be there, red carpet. We're all going to be hanging out, looking at a little documentary of a movie that never got made called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. Thanks again for checking out episode 6 of Heroes, and I'll see you guys next week.